Extended is probably my favorite format of Magic's past, between its legacy adjacent power level, proximity to the game's history, and of course its pedigree on the Pro Tour. It was always a treat when the extended event for the PT season rolled around. Extended as a format has seen some of the greatest matches and names all leave their mark on the game's history, between newcomers that became Hall of Famers, superstars that became legends, and the variety of unconventional decks often on display. Extended has seen it all and then some. So it should come as no surprise that the strategies that have been taken into high-level extended events are as varied as those that have triumphed on Sunday, and I'm guessing you've never heard of this Pro Tour winner until today, and if you have, maybe you've never seen just how it all unfolded. Pro Tour Valencia is the last stop before Worlds in the 2006-2007 season, with Time Spiral block finally fully released alongside the original Ravnica block. These new sets bring to bear a side of extended we've never seen before, at an event that features a final and a winner lost to time but that are nonetheless incredible. A final where the potential best deck of the tournament finds itself facing off against the best deck of the future. And in this unique moment in time, as hundreds of Magic players descend upon Spain to compete, all bringing to bear what they believe to be the best strategy in a seemingly wide open format, something happens that has never happened before. This is the story of Pro Tour Valencia 2007 and the player that was eventually crowned its king.
The sun is out over Pro Tour Valencia. Talk of a crazy extended format. There's basically every deck you've ever heard of for the last 5 years here, and somebody's running it. You've been taking a look at the deck list. What is going on at this Pro Tour?
Coming into Valencia, the format is widely seen as being very versatile, with as many as 15 different decks being seen as playable. But it's important to make one thing clear. There is a best deck. Thanks to the features of the Golgari from Ravnica and a quirky little future sight rare called Bridge from Below, the deck that everyone is deathly afraid of, and rightfully so, is Dredge. If you're not familiar with the history of maybe Magic's greatest boogeyman, this isn't the video to dive into that, but let's just say Dredge is a deck that takes the rules of Magic and laughs straight in their face, dumping a sea of zombies, jellyfish, and assorted creatures onto the battlefield while playing through the graveyard. The graveyard has always been a fixture of the battlefield in Magic. It's not a cosmetic zone where your used cards go, it's often an extension of your hand, and then some. And Dredge takes that concept to its limit, being basically an extension of your entire deck. While this concept is more true today than ever before, the printing of Narcomoeba and Bridge from Below took the strategy of milling your own cards into your graveyard from a fun recursive element to a genuine way to win a game, and win quickly at that. Left unchecked, Dredge is an explosive menace that threatens to topple anyone in its path, but in this top 8 there isn't a Dredge deck in sight, and a cursory glance at the sideboards give a good indication as to why. So sure, people were aware of the graveyard deck, but the successful players seemingly all brought sufficient sideboard hate, so we're left with a top 8 that is as diverse as promised. And if you're looking to add diversity to your meals, look no further than this video's sponsor, Factor. Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen meals right to your doorstep. Eat stress-free with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes with a boatload of different menu options. When things get hectic, Factor is flexible. Change your order up every week with plans from 4 to 18 meals per week, or pause or reschedule your deliveries anytime. As someone that juggles a lot of different things in life, I love how convenient Factor is, and it makes grabbing a meal at any time easy. Whether I'm writing a new video, editing, sorting my cards, or watching my favorite Magic shows on YouTube. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50hungry to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50hungry at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Their meals are so clean that you can even shuffle your unsleeved duels right after eating.
Have a lot of tournament experience. We talked to some of the judges from Memphis, and he's
Of the 8 players competing in the final rounds this Sunday, there are 6 distinct archetypes among them, and even the 2 similar decks are quite different. Giulio Barra of Italy and Slovenia's Tina Rus are both playing mid-range rock decks, but one of them is the more traditional junk color wedge of green, white, and black, while Tina Rus is rocking some blue to enable Gifts Ungiven and Genesis. Even though Dredge didn't make the top 8, players have certainly been taking advantage of the format's powerful recursion. The same distinction is true for the 2 blue-white Tron decks being played by Shuhei Nakamura and Makohito Mahara, with Shuhei on Tomohiro Saito's inexplicably named Orange Stompy, while Mahara is playing a gift package of his own. Even the aggressive decks are rocking two distinct flavors, with America's Sam Stein and Japan's Takayuki Koike running Affinity and Domain Zoo respectively. Koike in particular taking advantage of the format's premier aggro deck that's been turbocharged by the combination of Onslaught Fetchlands and the full suite of Shocklands from Ravnica. And this is just a sample of the decks on display all weekend, and what a weekend it's been. Remember when I said this Pro Tour featured something that's never happened before?
Flashback.
Something happens that has never happened before.
End of flashback.
Well, right as the weekend was about to start, the Pro Tour experienced an event that no one could have predicted: rain. Now, while I'm sure many events of the past have been the target of some inclement weather, Valencia's rain flooded the tournament venue, so much so that day one of the Pro Tour was cancelled, something that had never happened before and thankfully hasn't happened since. So players reconvened on Saturday to confusingly begin day one of the Pro Tour, in which they'd played 10 rounds of extended before 3 more on Sunday, leading into the top 8. Impressively, the staff managing this event only had to shave 5 minutes per Swiss round and 3 rounds total before we got to this top 8, instead of the usual 16 rounds you'd see at a 3-day Pro Tour.
10 rounds in 1 day.
That's a lot of Magic. I mean, I think they're projecting a finish time at like 11 p.m. You know, you're at the end of round 10. It could be 11:30. You're heading stumbling back to the hotel, and then you get 3 rounds to play in the morning.
Right, suddenly Gift Rock
Yeah.
looks a lot less attractive.
This was presumably tiring though for the players on a compressed schedule, none more battle-worn than the last 2 decks we failed to mention that also belong to our finalists, German Andre Müller and 16-year-old French student Remi Fortier. Müller is by his own accounts playing what he believes to be the best deck, and it may well be, at least excluding Dredge from the equation. Coming into the event, one deck in particular had been putting up impressive results on Magic Online, and that's the exact archetype he's brought all the way with him to the finals, Enduring Ideal. If you're unfamiliar with this cycle from Saviors of Kamigawa, the epic spells are a cycle of big, splashy sorceries that all do pretty powerful things, but at a cost. The white one, Enduring Ideal, fetches an enchantment from your library and puts it straight into play, letting you put a variety of powerful permanents directly onto the battlefield. The downside? The last word of text on the card says you can't play any other spells for the rest of the game. In exchange, you get a delayed trigger that casts the spell again for you in your upkeep. So while it's a little slow, Enduring Ideal lets you tutor up an enchantment directly from your deck turn after turn, eventually creating a series of lock pieces that lead to a game state where you slowly win and your opponent can no longer. This is a combo deck, which is a funny thing to think about from a deck that so glacially assembles its combo, but Ideal is a powerful enough effect that typically when you cast it, the game ends on the spot. Just not right away. It might be hard to believe, given what Magic looks like now, but this 7-mana sorcery that also silenced you permanently didn't just pass as a combo deck in 2007. It was a genuinely good choice for the format.
Alright, today I'm running the Enduring Ideal combo deck. It pretty much focuses on using a lot of mana acceleration, 4 Lotus Bloom, 4 Pen of Prison, 4 Seething Song, along with 11 Sacrifice lands, and then to power out the Enduring Ideal, that you can also fetch with Burning Wish, the 4th copies in the sideboard. What you want to do is, with this enchantment, you want to first get the Dovescape to get other players unable to play spells anymore, so they cannot disrupt any of your enchantments.
So you'll go get Dovescape first?
You get, usually, unless you're dead on the board, in which case you want to either get Solitary Confinement or Form of the Dragon if you want it a little bit more risky.
Okay.
You get the Dovescape first, so they have 1 more turn. In that turn they can kill you, they cannot play any spells, they can just cast creatures.
Certainly good enough to bring Andre into the finals, as he's only lost a single match all tournament. Fortier, on the other hand, was playing a surprisingly prescient pile of cards designed by fellow countryman Manuel Boucher. You probably don't know who that is either, but he'll go on to design another deck that'll be pretty impactful in the upcoming standard environment, a multicolored control pile called Quick and Toast. Safe to say Remi is in good hands when it comes to both deck choices and playtest partners, as he's running with all the strong French players of the era, including control extraordinaire Guillaume Wafutapa. The deck he's playing doesn't really have a name, but it's basically just a pile of good cards all mushed together in a primarily blue shell, but making room for almost all the other colors. In some ways, it's just another Manuel multicolored control deck featuring the greatest hits from all the recent sets. Between Tarmogoyf, some counterspells, Dark Confidant, Trinket Mage, Counterbalance Top, Umezawa's Jitte, and a few Chrome Moxes, this deck does a lot of different things, and its card quality almost hides how multifaceted it is. It can play tempo, it can play control, it can grind decks out, and it has solutions for just about everything. The overall package of cards it presents is very tight, but with good play and format understanding, it's able to navigate a shockingly high number of different matchups and game states. It's definitely a deck that rewards a lot of repetitions and asks you to eke out every little edge you can, can until you overwhelm your opponent with the advantage you've accrued, a philosophy best represented by a card both players are taking full advantage of, Sensei's Divining Top. In fact, Mueller's innovation for his deck was moving away from only having the fragile invasion sack lands in favor of some tops and fetch lands, making his mana both more flexible and giving him constant looks at his key cards, which is helpful when all you need is some mana and a 7 mana sorcery. Remi's entire deck also rests on the power of constantly looking at and manipulating the top 3 cards of your library, and given the marathon event players have played to get to this point,
That's a lot of magic.
that's an impressive amount of stamina. So presumably a little weary, but with only one best of 5 left to navigate, Mueller and Fortier play for the last time in Spain. Game 1 goes about as expected, as Mueller suspended not 1 but 2 Lotus Blooms on his first turn. Even though one of them stayed in suspended animation indefinitely thanks to Stifle, Mueller still had more than enough mana left over to cast the Enduring Ideal in his hand. Typically, this would signal the end of the game, but Fortier does have a trump card that almost no one else has, one that Andre even mentions in his deck tech video.
You see how Dovescape only neutralizes non-creature spells, so creature, enchantment, destruction is real bad. We already joked about losing to Absolver Thrall maybe in this Pro Tour. But this card we were most scared of actually was Venser Shaper Saving. With Riptide Laboratory, that really puts the hammer on us. Okay.
Venser Shaper Savant. Conveniently a creature, so it doesn't get stopped by Dovescape, and a card that's able to return Andre's powerful lock pieces back to hand, which I'll remind you he cannot replay thanks to the epic effect on Enduring Ideal. Knowing this, Mueller starts off by grabbing a solitary confinement to protect his life total, before following up with one of the more curious cards in the deck, Form of the Dragon. Not only is this goofy enchantment the deck's win condition, eventually dealing 5 damage a turn to a hapless opponent, but the moat effect attached to it makes attacking Andre quite challenging, even though his life total permanently resets to 5 every turn. While Remi does draw his best friend Venser to try and help his Tarmogoyfs cross the finish line, it's a turn too late as Venser can only deal with 1 enchantment, not 2, and as Andre tutors up a second form to go along with his 2 other lock pieces, Fortier sees the writing on the wall and scoops up his cards. Game 2 starts off great for Remi though, as he starts swinging in and accruing cards with Dark Confidant before adding a Tarmogoyf to the board to amp up the pressure, made even better by the fact that Mueller is stumbling a bit on mana. Eventually, the German finds a sideboard of Boseiju though, one of his best weapons against Counterspell, the only piece of permission Remi has anywhere in his 75. On the last possible turn of this game, Mueller plays an uncounterable Enduring Ideal thanks to the legendary tree, but unfortunately, Venser shows up at the right time this time and gently returns the spell back to Andre's hand, because clearly bouncing a spell on the stack is very different to countering it, and Venser not only gets around Dovescape, but even sidesteps the uncounterable clause on Boseiju. And these 2 games are fairly representative of how the matchup should play out. Fortier looks to apply pressure as the de facto tempo player in this matchup, and Andre is capable of quickly finding and forcing through his key cards, but needs to navigate carefully around some of Fortier's answers. But Mueller has been navigating through decks with counterspells all weekend. As we've established, Ideal is not the fastest or even most powerful combo deck the format has to offer, but it is one that's been built to beat almost any combination of cards your opponent could have, and it does so with ruthless efficiency. Remi doesn't even have the option that some of these blue best piles opted for of utilizing Riptide Lab, a land that lets you recur your Venser turn after turn, making beating Ideal a fairly trivial exercise. Unlike most of the players in Andre's way this weekend, Remi does have the tools to pry apart the combo, but he's not going to get a do-over if he mistimes or missteps. As grindy as his deck is, he's going to have to be very precise if he wants to pick apart Andre's enchantments. Game 3 sees Mueller start with yet another suspended Lotus Bloom as he's on track for another turn 4 Enduring Ideal, and Remi steadily assembles bits and pieces of resistance. The critical turn comes right before the Bloom would come off of suspend, as Remi is faced with one of 2 options: assemble Counterbalance plus top, or hold up the counterspell in his hand. Given the mana Andre is presenting, if the Bloom gets countered, there's no way for him to cast Ideal, and all Remi has to do is find a land or a Chrome Mox on top of his library to pluck the Lotus Bloom out of the stack and put it straight into the graveyard. Fortier takes this exact line against the face-up Lotus, and Mueller responds by showing him the Seething Song that lets him get to exactly 7 mana for the Ideal he's holding, to which Remi sighs and scoops it up. Now, there was a line here that let Remi deploy Counterbounce and hold up Counterspell, and given that he has a fetch land in play, would give him 2 different blind flips to counter 2 different spells, the incoming Bloom included. Although that line looks pretty bad against Orum's Chant unless you happen to blind Counterbounce that as well. While I think that is the best line given all the information we have, Remi obviously doesn't have perfect information and plays against the face-up cards instead of hedging against Andre's possible holdings. In any case, a loss here means if the French Wonder Kid is going to go back to school on Monday a Pro Tour champion instead of just a finalist, he's going to have to do it after an exhausting 2 days of play.
That's a lot of magic.
Piloting a complicated deck in his first Pro Tour top 8 ever with his back against the wall. So Remi begins game 4 by deploying a Tarmogoyf early and starting to put some pressure on, but unlike the other aggro control control decks throughout Magic's history, this one is leaning way more towards the control side of the spectrum, so it's not the fastest clock. And unlike other games Remi has played in this top 8, where he's been able to sculpt and grind and accrue little edges over a long game like his deck loves to do, the games in this final are very compressed in terms of turns. Andre is basically going to present his plan quickly in every game no matter what, and as we saw in the last game, Remi needs to make pinpoint decisions in order to thread the needle to victory even with Venser by his side, which he does have, showing it off the blind counterbounce flip he deployed Eternal Sword later when he was trying to snipe Mueller's Burning Wish. Even though the Tamo clock is slow, it is something, and Remi's hand develops to have his deck's sampler of interaction at the ready, a Venser, a Counterspell, and a Stifle. So when Andre aims an Arms Chant at the blue player, threatening to shut off all of those spells for a turn, Randy Bueller spells it out pretty plainly for the viewers at home.
48 lets this resolve, he probably just loses, right? 2, 4, 5, he loses to Seething Song, Ideal.
Fortier, of course, tries the blind flip off of Counterbalance,
Does not get lucky off the counterbalance.
but when that whiffs too, he follows up by saying the thing no one expects of him. Maybe not even Mueller. He just says okay. Remi does get a reshuffle off of his Flooded Strand to try and counterbalance the Seething Song, but when that also fails, everyone is left wondering why the player down 2-1 is letting the combo deck resolve its namesake combo card. Ideal resolves. Mueller finds Solitary Confinement, and even against the known Venser, feels pretty safe now that his key spell has resolved. Remi even joins in on the bit, attacking into an active confinement with his Gove as Andre confidently takes 0. So what's going on here? Are we just going through the motions, making sure the Enduring Ideal deck isn't magically holding all its enchantments in hand? Did Remi gamble on some counterbalance odds and get a bit unlucky? It turns out, even after so many games of Magic this weekend, Fortier laid out the line flawlessly to not only beat the Arms Chant that would undo most blue decks, but trap Mueller in his own Enduring Ideal shaped prison. After passing back with the confinement still in play, Remi counterspells the next copy of Ideal cast off the Epic trigger, deploys Venser to bounce the confinement forever, and plays and equips Jitte to pump his creature on the following turn. But out of counterspells and Vensers now, with no Riptide Lab anywhere in his deck, it might seem like the Blue Mage has run out of tricks, until you read the fine print on Enduring Ideal's last bit of text. Epic creates a triggered ability that casts the spell, and that same trigger, which is the only thing Enduring Ideal does after casting its upon him spell, can be stifled. And so Remi fires off his last bit of interaction to stop yet another enchantment from being put into play, and that's exactly enough time to take Andre's last remaining life points and force a 5th game. By the time the players have shuffled up for game 5, it seems the deck has finally come together for someone other than the combo player. Fortier finds a turn 1 Dark Confidant to start this game, powered out by Chromox, and as Mueller searches through his deck to set up an Enduring Ideal protected by Boseiju, the French youngster's hands start to shake as he finally sees everything come together.
There's a Shaper Savant. There's a Stifle. Look at his hand starting to shape and shake a little bit.
Yeah, he's seeing everything
He's
he
starting
needs.
to see it. It's game 5 of the Pro Tour. All I gotta do is win this one.
For what's going to be the final time, one way or the other, Mueller sacrifices his sacklands and slams an uncounterable Enduring Ideal onto the table, only for Remi to have the one card Andre has been scared of since before the top 8 started. A Venser Shaper Savant that returns the epic spell back to Mueller's hand right before he extends it in congratulations. While this entire top 8 is a treat, and the event circumstances themselves are a fascinating bit of Magic trivia, the fact that a player as young and bright-eyed as Remi Fortier had the foresight, technical skill, and guts in the finals of a grueling tournament to stare a silence effect like Arms Chant in the face and just say okay, planning to lock the Ideal player under their own sorcery, is just chef's kiss. To have the patience to see your permission spells in hand and know that the real fight is the one your opponent has unwittingly walked into would be a brilliant bit of play even if he lost. But that line paving the way for Remi to make history by winning his first ever Pro Tour, it's one of the reasons that Magic is just that. I hope you enjoyed this look into a Pro Tour top 8 that often goes underappreciated, and I'm glad you can now say you have heard of Remi Fortier. You probably know the power of Counterbalance Top if you're a Legacy player, but the winning deck from Valencia would become the blueprint for Patrick Chapin's Next Level Blue, a deck that would become a fixture of Extended, influencing Magic for the years that followed. I did say it was a deck from the future. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, and if you want to get notified about more videos like this, you should tap that subscribe button too. Get in the comments and let me know your thoughts on this little known Pro Tour, especially if you already knew it. And lastly, if you want to support the channel, you can do so via Patreon, where you can get sneak peeks at future video ideas, contribute to the monthly mailbag, and join the Patreon exclusive Discord. You can also donate via Coffee if you're looking for another way to directly help the channel. Thanks for watching, and as always, YouTube is showing you another video, and I'm willing to bet it slaps.